So let's look at what the global media is discussing today. So we begin with the Financial Times. Its lead report from Washington that US intelligence chiefs are continuing to warn American companies that there are significant risks in doing business with China. The main threats, they say, are from cyber attacks and copyright theft. Japan Times, it looks at a survey that suggests 61% of voters will support Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's plans to hold talks with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, even though there are no preconditions or guarantees of progress on the issue of Japanese nationals who were abducted many years ago. Gulf News leads with Saudi Arabia's call for emergency regional talks to deal with tensions with Iran. And you can see the Irish Times here. We're looking at their lead story, which is the possible legalisation of cannabis. It says a group of doctors fear the country is sleepwalking into legislation on the back of what they call a campaign of misinformation. And then BuzzFeed on, this is Gulf News, a story I've just mentioned already, which is looking at the tensions in Saudi Arabia. And then finally, BuzzFeed, the UK's relationship with the EU begs the question we're all asking about Brexit. What the hell is happening now is their headline. It's reported across the UK media that the Prime Minister has plans to make a bold offer to get support for her withdrawal agreement bill. And then hopefully we're going to have TechCrunch. Yes, we are, which is great. It looks at how 1 million fans of Games of Thrones have signed a petition on change.org in what it calls a futile hope of getting a remake of the end of the 8th series and the final end to the story. They'd like to see a change to the ending. Many are dissatisfied. Cornelia is chuckling away here. Cornelia Meyer is back as promised. And many of you have been in touch, actually. So many of you are telling me here on hashtag BBC The Brief that you don't like the ending. Anyway, have you seen the ending? Don't mention what happens.
I've never seen Game of Thrones. I have the Middle East. I don't need Game of Thrones.
Okay. Reality is enough for you without escapism. So let's have a look at the Financial Times. Looking at their main story, spy chiefs warn US companies on risks of doing business with China. This is talking about the fact that US intelligence chiefs have had many, many briefings with top company bosses, US tech firms, to discuss their concerns about China, etc. And of course, this is all in the backdrop of Huawei and the government.
Totally in the backdrop. And the interesting thing here that I'm taking is you have both the Mark Warner, who is a Democrat, and you have Marco Rubio. You know, you have both. You have actually cross-party support of this, which is these days in this fractious U.S. politics very rare. And I'm not surprised. I used to be the business development person for GE for Asia Pacific, and I helped build the manufacturing base. And you know, really, IP, intellectual property, was one of the big issues. So I'm not surprised that we got there. I'm just saying what took us so long to get there.
So you actually agree with the US's stance that there is real concerns about protection of intellectual property.
Protection of intellectual
property. But what about
absolutely.
Security fears?
Security theory, yes, because so many of the companies are so interlinked with the government, and especially if you are a NATO country. If you're Switzerland, it's different, you know. But if you're a NATO country, those are real and present concerns. But then you have to look at it. Everything has several sides. You have to look at the other side, which is how interconnected the supply chains of these companies are. You know, Intel, Qualcomm, you know, about 50% of what they sell goes to China. Apple produces a lot of its phones in China. So this is very interconnected. So it's very difficult to do this without causing real harm also to the US economy.
I mean, from Huawei's perspective, they've always been very vocal about the fact that they are they're not run by the Chinese authorities as such, that actually they're doing all they can to assure governments around the world that there is not a security concern or a security fear. Yeah,
I can understand. I hear them and I see where they're coming from, but then you have a government, you know, you're dealing with a government that will, if it needs to, if it feels the need, it will intervene. Look at why does Google no longer run its search engine in China? It doesn't no longer run it, not just because it doesn't want to, but it has concerns over the censorship that's applied. So it's a really tricky issue. And as I said, there's many sides to it. There's the commercial side to it. There's the security side to it, and probably a calmer discourse might be helpful.
Well, we'll have to see how all this develops. Of course, this is all happening when the United States and China are discussing their trade relationship, and the recent discussions have not been going well at all. So let's have a look now at Japan Times next, which looks quite interestingly at 61%. This is a survey, a poll that's come through. 61% back the Prime Minister's idea of a summit with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Give us your thoughts on this. Of course, this is a very fraught relationship.
Yes, for many reasons. You know, I mean, the Japanese object to having missiles thrown in their direction for very clear and good reasons. But then we have also the issue of the abductees. About 17 Japanese were abducted by the North Korean regime, and only a few have been returned so far. So up to now, Abe, who is sort of rather right-wing, rather tough, said, you know, I will only meet with Kim Jong-un if we can solve this abductee issue in advance. He's now softened his stance somewhat, and it's interesting to see that the people of Japan seem to be behind him in this.
Indeed, because basically this poll suggests that a majority are saying we're up for a meeting between these two leaders, regardless of any preconditions agreed on the abductees.
And that may get us further. And what's interesting, Donald Trump is going to meet some of the families of the abductees. So that may give another extra pressure to get these people back, which would be a huge win for Abe.
Now let's talk about the Game of Thrones going on in the Middle East, and Gulf News front page outlines the various issues that have happened in the last couple of weeks, what's been going on, and how tensions are rising, and how actually now in Saudi Arabia they've called for emergency regional talks to discuss the mounting tensions. You work with many clients in the Middle East. You're there all the time. Give us your take on this. You're also a contributor to Arab News as well.
Yes.
Give us your take on this.
Yeah, I'm actually very concerned because whilst everybody says we don't want a war, and I think it's very good that that the Saudis want an emergency GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which has all the Gulf countries in it, summit. To discuss this. Whilst everybody says we don't want a war, you know, then you have the attacks on the pipeline, or the west to east pipeline, which is very important. You have these 4 tankers that got attacked. You have the rhetoric, you have a US ship going out, you have squadrons of planes going out, potentially 120,000 people going out. Trump's tweet that, you know, it will be the end of Iran if there's a war. What I'm concerned about is that nobody wants a war, but that tempers are flaring so much that a mistake, you know, this is a powder keg, and this can incinerate very easily, so that someone will light a match somewhere, and it will fall and it will explode. And I'm really watching it with bated breath.
Okay, as we all are as well. Irish Times, Ireland sleepwalking into legalising cannabis warns doctors. Many countries around the world are considering what they think about cannabis. Its use for medicinal purposes is changing, and laws around that are changing, but also for recreational purposes. I mean, in the US, we've got some states where it is legal, for example, Colorado. It's massive business, and we hear about an industry gearing up for legalisation in countries around the world, UK, one of them. What's this article about Ireland?
This Ireland, some of the doctors say, you know, whilst, you know, they understand the medical use, they're deeply concerned about the recreational use, because they see that it can really cause damage to people. So they say, we're sleepwalking into this. You're sleepwalking us, you, the government, are sleepwalking us into legalizing cannabis without really addressing the issues that can occur if you use it for recreational use. So I guess, like everything, there are two sides to this coin as well.
The debate will continue. Let's skip on to Game of Thrones at the end, and BuzzFeed looking at the debate and the campaign to change the end. TechCrunch, not BuzzFeed. I do apologise.
We're not doing.
Don't give anything away. I know you haven't seen it.
We're not doing Brexit. We're doing Game of Thrones.
No, I'm going to talk about Brexit every day for the next few weeks, probably. Sorry, we're skipping on to Game of Thrones. When you next come in, Cornelia, we'll talk about Brexit. Should viewers be allowed to see an end, to a change to the end, or should they just go with what producers and directors have decided?
I think that the power of the pen is held by the producer and the director, and the guy who writes the script. But obviously it's a free world. We live in a democracy. If you'd like to change it, you can always voice your opinions.
And over a million have.
Fully being aware that the power of the pen firmly lies with the producer and the director.
All right, thank you for being on the programme, Cornelia, on the briefing. Thank you too for your company and your comments. So many of you have been in touch about Game of Thrones. #BBC The Briefing is the place to have a look at the debate.